Hi, I'm Chrane. We have just come to the close of the first beta weekend for Diablo 4, the early access beta. And I figure at this point I might as well go through my primary feedback I have about the beta, because I've written down most of my thoughts on it, right? And what I like, what I dislike, some bugs I encountered, what I think could be hampering like the experience itself of the game that I think really needs to be addressed, and just some personal notes I have from playing through the game, you know? So let's go through this. This is my official Diablo 4 beta feedback. So the most important stuff I feel is the like main critique of stuff that I feel needs to be looked at for the future. So I'm not going to focus too much on the positive things in this, but I will mention them like right here off top so we don't forget about the stuff that is actually good. I don't want to make this come off as like I strongly dislike this or anything. I've really enjoyed the beta. I think the beta was fun. I think there's a lot of good stuff in here, but there are some worries I have about the game itself. And before we get to that, let's go through what I actually really like about it. I really like the story of it, which is nice to hear from someone who's done like the lore stuff, right? From someone who primarily likes the lore side of video games. I think the story of the beta is interesting. I'm not going to talk specifics here because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. I like the story, where it's going, what's happening in here, how they're doing cutscenes with the player characters showing up, being fully voice acted. Like all that stuff. Very good stuff. Well done. I like the music, which was something I was worried about, but I'm now not really worried about at all. I like the song that kicks in when you're playing against your first boss in the tutorial, that then comes back later when you're playing against the world boss. It has like a guitar riff and stuff like that. Very cool boss song. Like that a lot. Like the fact that it feels a bit different. I also like the fact that there's a song that plays when you're in the like eastern parts of the Storm Peaks. Is that the name of the zone? Is it Storm Peaks? Fractured Peaks. Storm Peaks is something from WoW, I think. Fractured Peaks. When you're on the eastern side of the zone, it plays like a guitar-led thing that it's kind of reminiscent of the Diablo 2 music, and I think it works very well. It feels new, but it still feels reminiscent of the old stuff, and I really enjoy that one a lot. So the music gets a plus from me. The sound design is also very good. There is one cutscene where you are about to enter like a mine shaft and you talk to two characters in the story, where there's some like miscellaneous background sound effects that sounds like pots and pans. That's really loud no matter what you have set in your sound settings. So I think that's just a bug. That's the only moment where I was like, what the hell is going on with the sound? But otherwise, I feel like the environmental sounds, like the backgrounds, sound effects, just the feel of the game through sound is very good. And I've enjoyed all of it outside of that one cutscene, but I think it's a bug, so I don't want to focus on that too much. The environmental design of the game, the way everything looks, the way everything's built, it feels good, it feels right, it's easy to traverse, it's easy to read environments, it feels threatening, it feels genuine, it feels dark. Even though there are areas outside with snow and stuff like that where it's bright, you still feel the looming darkness over everything going on in the game. So props to the environmental design and everything here. Next point is the combat. It feels tight, it feels responsive. So that's like props to them for like taking their time and making the combat feel good and responsive. I don't really have any issues with the combat whatsoever. I like the fact that there's actual difficulty in the bosses whenever you fight them at the end of a dungeon, or meet some through the story and stuff like that. You feel like you're actually, like, you can die fighting these bosses. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but you actually feel like there's a challenge, you know? And I really appreciate that, because that's a feeling I never felt playing through Diablo 3, ever. Even on launch, when it was harder, I still never really felt that when playing through the game, but now I feel like there's an actual challenge to it. A well-designed challenge to it. I haven't tried the game on the base setting. I've always gone for the second one, so I don't know how different it is on the base one. But playing on the second one, like, the game feels good in difficulty, so no complaints there. I like the gear design I've seen. I'm not a fan of the way to, like, go off of that on, like, a slightly negative part. I'm not very sold on the, like, I'm not personally a big fan of the armor design of the sorcerer, but, like, that's just a taste thing. That's not like it's poorly designed. It's just the sorcerer stuff is not for me. But in general, I feel like the armor design for all the classes is very well done. It all feels like it sticks very well to the idea of what the class is, and the armor designs and helmets and weapons and stuff like that feels very unique to every class. You're not gonna look at a piece of sorcerer gear and think it looks like rogue armor, for example. It all feels very different from each other. It's very distinctive, and there's a lot of different variety. It feels very thought out. I like that there's a coloring option for gear as well. It's a good idea. I'm glad it's in there. And I like the world boss that's in the beta. I enjoyed the fact that the cool song from the prologue boss fight came back. And I like that first time I was there, I got thoroughly beaten the crap out of by the boss. And the second time I was there, I did so much better because I understood the attacks. I could see the patterns coming. I knew how to, like, I learned how to deal with the boss, and it felt very cool. Even though we didn't beat the boss the second time, because we had a level 11 and a level 14 in the group. I don't know how they got in there, but I felt more satisfied with my performance during the second try against the boss. And sure, you punch like, you defeat the boss and then you get a loot pinata at the end, kind of, which is not my favorite thing about later Diablo games. The fact that it just rains loot, but still, like, the fact that the world boss leaves you satisfied afterward, like, yeah, that was a good fight, that was cool, is all good in my eyes. So like, that concludes, like, the main things I really like about what they're doing with this game, the stuff I really enjoy. I will have, like, chapters in the timeline of the video, so you can just, like, if you don't care about the stuff that's actually good because you've heard a lot of good stuff about the beta, you can jump around and see, like, what's the issues though? What's the problem? What is he worried about? So for now, bugs. The main bug I keep like, I don't know if interfacing with is the right word for it, but, like, the bug that keeps creeping up is the rubber banding. And I guess that's technically not a bug. It's just server communication issues and stuff like that. But it's so frustrating to deal with, and it keeps happening. The rubber banding it's such a shame that it keeps happening, but it keeps happening. And I hope they can get control over that before launch, because it's the most frustrating thing that just keeps happening when you're playing. And as well as there's some stuttering going on as well, and you're never sure if it's your hardware or if it's the game itself, the server-side communications and stuff like that happening. Those two, like the rubber banding with zones and stuff like that, and the stuttering that keeps happening, are like the two biggest problems that keeps reoccurring, and it's a shame But I hope they can solve that. I think they can. I truly believe that the Diablo team can pull it out and actually deliver on these things. I have hope. I'm not going to sit here and be all pessimistic about it. Like, I think as long as they just are aware that things are happening, I think if they are given a chance to actually deal with it, I think they can do it. I think they can fix this stuff. It's just, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth, like when you're finally getting to play something you've been excited for so long, and then something you feel like is a simple issue keeps happening. But it's also like, we are beta testing this weekend because testing server stress and all that stuff. So this is what they want us to find in the beta, because it is a beta. And I think people these past few years have forgotten what a beta actually is. Like, a beta is to test this stuff, and they have acknowledged the fact that there is a lot of rubber banding going on. Pass Radar has been talking about it on Twitter and stuff like that, so they're aware. And I fully believe that they can actually solve it. It's such a shame that it's the first thing you keep encountering over and over. And I just hope it's not like people's lasting impression with the game, because that would be a real shame, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. And it would be a shame if the rubber banding keeps overpowering all the good stuff that we keep seeing. So what are some actual like critiques I have for the game design-wise? Well, first of all, this is a minor one. But I think it's a bit funny, but also like, save my ears, please. Act 1, main town music, which is where I'm standing right now, the song we're listening to. And we're actually hitting the exact part of the song I'm about to talk about. The Act 1 main town music hits too loud and hard on the violins. RIP ears. The violins, when they come into the song right there that we just heard, if it's not on lower volume, you're gonna go deaf. So that's just like me easing you into like what we're gonna talk about here. Something I feel like the game really needs to look into is the way the pop-ups work when you level up. Because when you level up, you have like, oh, you reach level 10, you can go upgrade your potion, and you can do this thing or that thing because you leveled up. It gives you a quick pop-up, and then it disappears. I think the text that pops up, giving you an update, should also be put into the chat as a system message for you personally, so you don't lose the information. Because if you miss the pop-up, you might miss out on what you just unlocked. Like what big things just happened. That happened to me quite a few times, and I think that pop-up text should also be put in the chat so you can actually read it later on if you either forget or if you didn't see the message at first. I think that's a bit important. Camera is too zoomed in / too close to the character. This is a huge pet peeve of mine when it comes to this genre of video games overall. I never got into Path of Exile for two major reasons. One is the skill tree. Like, do I need to explain that? The skill tree is like, you can't just casually play this. You have to look up builds. And I always found that not very appealing. The second part, which is tied to this, is the fact that I felt like the camera in Path of Exile was always too close to the character. And it always put me off and made me not really want to play it, because I felt like the camera's too tight, it doesn't sit right with me. I don't see enough of what's happening around me in the environment. And there's a few games like this that keeps doing this, and I don't really understand why, if it's based on just, well, we want you to see your character, and because they keep adding the character to, like, when you click C for your inventory, you see your character huge right there and stuff like that, because all of these games now are focused on like your cosmetics and stuff like that. They want you to be able to look at your character. I think the camera should be zoomed out in the overworld by about 15 to 20%, honestly. If I swap over to my gameplay right here, I feel like this is too close. Like, yeah, sure, the sorcerer is one of the smaller characters, so it's not that bad. But if I swap over to the barbarian, who is huge, and this will be the same case for the druid as well, because the druid is enormous. They somehow, for some reason, they decided to give him my body type, which is like, thank you. I'm not sure if it's like, should I take a hint, drop weight, or like what? What are we doing? But like for real though, like look at how big the barbarian is on the screen right here. He's comically huge. So are the big knights as well. Like I feel like some of the characters designs are just too big, but also the camera's just a little too close to the character for my taste. I can see just a few too many veins on his arm, you know? I feel like the camera could zoom out a good like 15% from this, and it would be perfect. That's like one of my main issues with the game. I feel like the camera's way too close. Characters are unnaturally big. Barb and Druid, yeah, I mentioned that. I feel like it's strange that they're so huge. And I wish the Druid was smaller. Like, big time. Inspect should show skill tree. If you're inspecting a different person now, you can see their gear, you can see their title, their name, and all that stuff. You cannot see what their build is, and I think that would be hugely helpful for people to be able to inspect other people and see what builds they're running. I think that's something that should be added to the inspect window. If it's already there, I missed it completely. And at that point, it needs to be made more clear where it is. But I think the inspect should show the skill tree of the person you're inspecting. The font feels sterile to me. It doesn't ring very Diablo to me. If you go back to the gameplay, I feel like the font we're using here is just... like, is it Arial? Like, what? It's way too clean. You have an alright, pretty decent font going on the title of the item, as you can see up there, but when it comes to actual descriptions of items, why is the font different? I feel like use the top font on the name of the item for everything at that point. Why is it different? Is it because there's no lowercase for that font? Then just do everything uppercase. Who cares? I'm not a fan of the font choice they've made for the entire description of the items and stuff like that. And when things are on the ground, I feel like do they have that same? Yeah, they have that same sterile font when it's on the ground. And I'm not a fan of it, honestly. I think it doesn't fit with the style of the game. It doesn't fit the tone. It's not it. I'm not a fan of it. UI customization. I think a lot about the UI leaves a lot of things to be desired, honestly. On the UI, I'm actually going to hide my camera right here. On the UI, right? You don't have much happening right here. You have your bars and health and stuff and all that right down there. You have your map. Why is there always an icon telling me tab to map or journal? Like, I know this. I don't need to see the keybind here all the time. I don't need to see map and journal here all the time. Remove that. It says tab up here as well. Like, you don't need both this and that. You don't even need either of them, but since it's already up here, just remove this. You could remove that too. It's unnecessary. It's nice seeing the difficulty up here. Clock is good. nice font, the nice font for the what's it called, for the area you're in. That's nice. I think the map, there should be some customization available for the map. I would like to have it transparent underneath my character, like in Diablo 2, instead of just going to the big map that just covers the entire screen that I can only interact with. I want it to have it underneath my character, transparent, and then be able to decide how transparent the map should be. I would like to be able to zoom out on the minimap up here if I'm using it. If I'm using the minimap, I should be able to zoom out because it's very tight in on the map, just like the way the camera's tight in on the character. There does not need to be keybinds all the time listed underneath everything going on here at the quick bars. I don't need to see the Q. I don't need to see the numbers, left or right click. Like, if you have them, do like they did in Diablo 3 and put them right here. Like, over the icons, like semi-transparent. Because it's strange that this whole bar is just hovering here. If you remove the keybind icons and just push all this down to the bottom of the screen, I think it would look way better. Because right now it's just hovering on screen, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think that could use a change, or just, you know, give us the option to change it. Because right now the option I have is either have it in the middle of the screen or push everything to the side, like they have on the consoles, right? I think we can actually go in here into the options and do that, so you can see what I'm talking about. This is what it looks like with the left side configuration. Now everything is tighter. It feels like you have more screen, but like you still have the A, the Q, the T, the space, all the numbers down here. If this was pushed down neatly, tight in the corner down here, it would also be much better, just like when it's centered. I feel like the fact that that's missing, or not missing, but the fact that it's hovering and the icons are always showing, I feel like kind of takes you out of it a bit. I don't need to always see the keybinds. I don't need to have all the numbers down here. Just push these things down, remove the numbers, remove tab, map and journal, the tab up here. Like, clean this stuff up a bit. It's not appealing to look at. Like, the demon down here and the angel over here is all good. This is good stuff. The health globe looks nice. The energy orb looks nice. It's just push it down, remove the numbers and icons and all that stuff, and just trust that people understand what they're looking at. And if you have to show the numbers and keybinds, put them right above the skills, semi-transparent, and just leave them there. That's fine. There should also be an easier way to see cooldowns. I think we had a whole thing about that in Diablo 3 as well, where they put in a whole different thing of options to make the cooldowns easier to see. I think they should probably look into that in this one as well, because it's easy to miss when your stuff is off cooldown. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. Debuffs. Whenever you get a debuff, I have no idea where it shows up on screen. I don't know what they look like. I don't know where they are. Like, are they in a corner somewhere? What do they look like? They should have a unified color, so you know, like, oh, it's a purple icon or it's a red icon, so it's a debuff. I have no idea what they look like. I have no idea where they show up. I would just like some clarity on that stuff. Make them easier to identify. This whole UI for the character interface, it's very close to Diablo 3, and I did not like the inventory system in Diablo 3. I know that they want to put your character here to always show it off, because cosmetics are a big part of games these days, so they want you to be able to see your character all the time whenever you look right here. So I understand that. It takes up so much space. The positions of these, I guess, is fine. Like, if you're gonna show the character, they should cover the corners, so that makes sense. This stuff with like all the like attack power, I think in general is just not an interesting stat, and it just feels like this is your damage number, and that if it goes up, you're doing good. Like, your correct items, well done. Like, that in general, I'm not a fan of, but that's not what I want to focus on right here. I'm not a big fan of the way this whole UI looks at all, to be honest. I like this, having different inventories for different stuff. Good idea. Like that. Like having the currency down here. I don't know how I feel about this being the inventory. I guess I don't have a good fix for this, because I can't really explain why I don't like it. I don't know. Something about this just doesn't feel right to me. I don't know if it's the fact that every item takes up one entire slot, no matter how big it is. But I guess people are also over the days of inventory management, because we are all pea-brains now. I don't know what my issue is with this inventory. I don't like it, but I don't know why. I'm gonna leave that up to smarter people to talk about. I'm gonna put my voice out there to say I am not a fan of the inventory and the UI of this stuff. I don't know why. It doesn't sit right with me. This whole thing is very... I don't know, the menu is unappealing in a way. I don't know how to describe it, honestly. I don't. It is unappealing to me. So the game is like an MMO light at this point. It reminds me a lot of Destiny, the way the multiplayer stuff and online stuff works, right? Why is there not a group finder? Like, why is there not a menu that exists where you can just pick the dungeon you want to run and either list it for people to manually join or just automatically queue into it? I don't know what people would prefer there. Probably just listing the group and then like running in there and then you see each other. I don't think people would be very into the idea of click button, you are in the dungeon. I don't think people would like that in a Diablo game, because I feel like most of the community playing is not on the younger side. Like, a lot of us are old and jaded, you know? So I feel like they would prefer to just be able to list a group, and then whenever everyone's walked in, you know, you see each other, or you just list a group and then people join your party. Then you can walk in together. I feel like something like that is missing. I feel like a group finder would be a great tool to have. And I don't know why it's not here, because we have MMO elements. So why is the thing that makes it easier to play with people not in the game? Makes close to no sense to me, honestly. Personally, I think the MMO aspects are the weakest part of this game. And I don't know if the move over to a big open world is worth the trade-off for everything you're losing at that point. What I'm referring to is the fact that you have group events happening around you, where then the people from those group events can sometime bleed out into the rest of the world, where they can take your quest mobs, which doesn't feel great. Which is like, I'm not playing a Diablo game to be playing an MMO. That's not why I played these games. Why are there so many timed events happening all over? Like, I realize that you need them to be timed to reset them so that new groups of people can walk into them to play them. But like, it feels like the world in the game is never changing. That no matter you can fight this guy over and over and over and over and over again. You don't have to like exit the game and they're back or anything. It's just they just never go away. They just keep respawning. The timed group events, and it's like it's not my favorite thing. And then you have the automated groups with the world boss. With, like I said before, the second time I ran that boss, there was a level 11 and a level 14 and a level 18 in my group when the boss fight is level 25. And then it zoned out 3 level 25s to, I assume, put in a different group. And then we just didn't have the numbers to deal with the boss fight. So since the beta only had that boss spawn 4 times, we missed out on that one attempt because the group of people assigned to us from the online side, like the MMO side of this game, assigned random people to the group that could not effectively help in that fight. And if the boss fight is going to be as rare as it is in the beta on live, I don't think that's a great system. You could work around that system if you have a group finder. Then people could list a group for the world boss. That'd be great. But the auto assigns of people to the world boss, timed events, and just group events popping up everywhere on the map all the time. It feels like the game is trying to force itself to be an MMO, but I don't think Diablo lends itself very well to be an MMO. It just I just keep thinking how I'd rather just click start game, play through the game, and then when I leave, the world closes. And then when I boot it up again, it's a new map. It's a new randomized world map, and the game is different. And if I want to run stuff again, I can do it. But it's like when I'm actively playing, the world stays the way it is because I've been through there. I've been through an area in this current run I'm doing, and the demons don't come back. The boss is dead. Stuff like that. I miss that part of the game actively when I'm playing Diablo 4, which is a shame. And I don't know if the moving over into MMO style feels like it's worth the trade-off for me personally. I know that like that all this stuff is just personal opinion, right? You don't have to agree with anything I'm saying. This is just what I'm feeling playing through all this stuff. MMO but doesn't allow trading. That's not completely true because there is trading in the game. However, whenever you reach a good threshold for items, suddenly they are all account bound and you cannot do anything with them. If I'm just quickly looking at my legendaries here, they are all account bound on my character. Then you're gonna have sacred items and uniques later on, which are the next item grade above legendary. So if you already are not allowed to trade legendaries, I don't think you're going to be allowed to trade sacred or unique items. Like, why would they allow that if legendaries are off the table? You could trade bases with yellow items, but is a trading economy where you're only trading yellow items interesting at all? Personally, I don't see it, but I don't know. My favorite part about playing Diablo 2 is that whenever a new season rolls out, the entire economy for everyone is reset. So when you find a good item when the new season rolls around, even if it's not an item that you need for your build, you still get really excited because you can use that item and trade it for an item that will be great for you. And with locking trade, I don't understand why all games these days are like, this item is bound to you. This is your item. You're not allowed to trade this to anyone. Like, what makes that better? How is that better? Like, it's weird. Like, it's just a pair of gloves, dude. Let me give them to someone else. Who cares? It's just, for the past like 10 to 15 years, video games have been so obsessed with like, let me tell you how to play your game. And I have to ask, like, what's so bad about giving the possibility of giving a new player a great item? But that ruins the experience for them. But what if that's the experience they want to have? Like, why? Why? Video games are supposed to be fun. I don't play a video game to step into another person's specially designed sandbox. Like, that's not... Only if it's relating to story, sure. I'm playing a game to see another person tell a story. But the way they're railroading you with items, and the way that items have to be used and played with, I don't like it at all. Just open up the trading. But what about third-party sites where you can sell them, where people sell them for real money? Just add an auction house into the game. Like, it doesn't have to be a real money auction house, because that's not gonna go over well. That it didn't go over well last time. Just add a type of auction house in a game where players can put an item up and pick what item they want in return. And then a person could look at that and put in the item they want to give in return, and it automatically just trades the items for the two people. That's one idea to solve that stuff. Does that solve the issue with third-party sites trading this stuff for gold? No. They're gonna do it anyway. They're gonna find ways around that anyway. They will always exist. If you decide to make an MMO, there's always going to be third-party sites that sell stuff for real money. If it's not for items, it's for leveling. Like, it's always going to happen. It doesn't matter. So just allow trading. You can't stop the dark side of the internet from doing what it's going to do. You can't, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't punish the people that wants to play your game because of the actions of a few morons on a forum somewhere. Like, it makes no sense to me. Please don't add dailies. That's all I have to say about that. I know you're making it like an MMO game, kind of like MMO light, like Destiny. Don't add dailies, please, for the love of God. It's nice seeing people in town, but in the wild, they are taking my quest mobs, and I don't like it. Just show people in town, because you want the people to show off their cosmetics. Have people show off in town and around the world boss. And, you know, maybe have the full group of... I don't know, is it supposed to be 12 people fighting a world boss? Because when I did it, we had 6 people. And 3 were under-leveled. So, I feel like that needs to be looked at as well, why it's not distributing the correct amount of people in the beta. Because I think there's enough people playing. I don't think that's the problem. But yeah, just take people out of the overworld. I don't want to see someone running down a mountain towards me. Like, why? Get out of the way. I'm doing my thing. Just have them relegated to towns and boss areas, like the world bosses. I don't need to see every sorcerer fighting fallen enemies and whenever I'm doing a quest. I don't want to see them. I would love the option for private games. If we are I know the game is focusing on going MMO light, but I just wish they would stick with how Diablo has always been single player first. I wish the game would allow me to just create private game whenever I'm booting up the game. So I could just play through the game and not see anyone. I'm not saying it needs to be offline. I know we're never going back to those days, even though I would love to. They removed the offline option from Diablo 2 Resurrected because we can't have nice things. I wish I could just do private game where I just go into the game and play through the game and I don't have to think about seeing other people. But how will you be able to do the world boss and the timed events? And it's like, well, then I don't. If it's a private game, I can maybe invite people from my friends list and stuff like that into it. It doesn't mean it's going to be a single player, like only me in there, but it's a private game. I don't have to worry about seeing other people running around in the wilderness and stuff like that, but just Diablo has always been solo first, multiplayer second, and I wish they would just stick with that. Because I feel like all the stuff that is unappealing about the game so far comes from the multiplayer side of it. When all the base stuff that's in there is actually good, the multiplayer stuff comes in and distracts and takes away from what works. Personally, like, I shouldn't have to keep saying that, like, personally this is how I'm feeling, because obviously this is just my personal opinion. This is not fact. But I feel like I have to say it just so people don't, like, chew me out for having an opinion on this. Put the leave dungeon from the emote wheel on the minimap. If you didn't know this, whenever you finish dungeon, there is no clear way displayed on your screen how to get out of the dungeon, even though we have letters and icons for everything on the UI. There is no indicator telling you how to get out of the dungeon quickly whenever you're done, which is strange because there's an overabundance of icons and buttons everywhere. So what you can do is click E. The game doesn't tell you this, to my knowledge. You can click E, and then you can click here, leave dungeon, which is great. That's a great addition. It's quick, it's simple. The game doesn't tell you how that works, which is a big oversight. You can also open your map, click on the staircase or whatever, like in the dungeon, and leave that way. That works too. You could just put a button up here to click to leave the dungeon like you had in Diablo 3. To solve this, just so it's clear. Like all this other stuff, you don't need here because people know this. People know the keybinds of this stuff. It doesn't need to always be here. But leaving a dungeon, like the fact that the game never shows you or teaches you that the leave dungeon thing is in the emote wheel, which is not very intuitive. I'm happy it's there because it's a quick, nice thing. But I feel like you should just put a button up here whenever the boss is dead and you can leave the dungeon. We're almost done, don't worry. There is so much loot dropping everywhere all the time. This is not something that only Diablo 4 is guilty of. This is almost every game in this genre these days. People are adding loot filters to these games to just not having to see all the clutter because there's shit everywhere. I haven't seen anything about a loot filter in this game. I don't think there should have to be one for the game to be working correctly. It's helpful, but I don't think it should be a necessary feature, personally. And there's too much loot that keeps dropping everywhere all the time. Just when you kill the world boss, it drops 4 legendaries for you. I haven't seen anyone with any different result than that. 4 legendaries every time. Then you get a box, and in the box, 3 legendaries. That's 7 legendaries for defeating the boss. Now, the reasoning why that's not too bad is because legendary is only like the third or fourth highest type of item. Which makes no sense. Why is it named legendary if there's 3 levels of item quality higher? Like you go from normal to rare to magic, which is your white, blue, and hold on. White normal, blue magic, yellow rare, which you can make into legendaries with affixes. Then you have your legendaries, right? And then you have uniques and sacred items, and then ancestral items, I think, which is like sacred items with higher rolled stats, I think is how that works. Like they did with the items at the end of the Diablo 3 itemization. So why is legendary items named legendaries? They're not legendary. They drop like hotcakes. They're everywhere. When people see legendary items dropping in the beta, they think they're seeing the top end gear. Which is why people have been talking negatively about legendary items on Reddit and other forums throughout the entire beta weekend. Because if you're fully decked out in legendaries, you're like, why am I getting so much good gear? Even though it's not technically that good gear. I think naming them legendaries mainly is my main issue with the amount of them dropping. I hope sacred items, ancestral items, whatever they're going to be called, and uniques don't drop like this. I hope they're more rare, that you don't deck out your character fully in 3 hours whenever a season starts like it is in Diablo 3. I hope you have to work for the gear. I wish there was trading, so you could trade with people for the gear that you want. Rename the legendaries to something else. It's non-intuitive to have years and years and years of playing video games behind you and just have a legendary drop and it's not even the third best type of item. It's strange. The item doesn't feel legendary. Like, call them occult items or something. Because of the occultist that puts the affixes on top of them. Like, because that's what the legendary affixes are put there because of the occultist that puts the affixes on top of them. So just call them occult items or something like that instead of legendaries. Because there's just a huge misconceptions of what the items are in the community right now. And it feels like you're just giving away good items. And I don't think that's a good look for the game in general, because it makes it look like you don't have to put any effort in. It's just participation rewards, basically. So rename the legendaries to something else. And just, I don't know, name the sacred items legendary and the ancestral items sacred or whatever at the top. Don't put your fourth item rarity as legendary if you're gonna have 7 or whatever. It's muddling the perspective of what's happening and what items you're getting. So move away from that, please. I think it's really distracting people from everything else, basically. What about dungeons then? Dungeons is one of the parts of the game where I am. I haven't touched the dungeons a lot because they all feel the same to me. They all feel very uninteresting with not very interesting enemies inside of them. And whenever you get to the end of a dungeon, like, you can never stumble into the final room, right? Every dungeon you walk into, you will eventually reach a door that you will need to unlock using a key or 2 orbs or whatever. So you get to the door, and then you have to go to the left to pick up 1 orb for one of the pedestals, and then you go to back to the door, put the orb in, then you go to the right this time, and get the other orb, put in the pedestal, and the door opens, and you can fight the boss. You can never just stumble into a room and fight the boss. And it feels the same every time. I haven't managed to play more than 8 of them myself because I just feel bored running dungeons. And knowing that the end game is dungeon running is scary to me. Because the dungeons are the least appealing part of the game besides the MMO stuff. Just fundamental gameplay stuff. The dungeons feel uninspired just because of the way the door works. And I feel like they shouldn't have to feel the same, all of them. It's unfortunate. And while I haven't been able to play more than 8 of them myself, I have been watching a lot of videos of people playing the game. So I have seen a bunch of the other dungeons that I haven't run myself, and they all feel the same. The environments are great. That's not what I'm complaining about. The environments are great. The selection of mobs can be interesting. The mobs you fight don't always feel that great. Because they're just like, oh, it's just another one of these dudes. Whatever. That's not really what I want to focus on with this point, though. The fact that all the dungeons feel samey is not great. And the randomizing needs to be... You need to be able to run into a dungeon and accidentally walk into the boss room. In at least some of them. And all the basements look the same. Whenever you walk into a basement, they all look the same. It's like a V shape, but with round rooms. It's... yeah, all the basements look the same. Why are there armor racks in the middle of the forest? That's a question I don't know if I want to know the answer to. But just throwing it out there. Those are my main points of feedback for the beta. Like I said at the beginning, there are a lot of stuff I like about the game. I listed almost all of them at the beginning of this video. So it's not like the video game bad because I have complaints or feel like there's issues with stuff like this. There's always going to be issues you find with any game you play, but just I want to have it said. So it's out there. So if people agree with a bunch of these things, there's a place of reference to other people also finding issues with these things, you know? And just in general, my feelings about the game are positive. I just feel like it's worth pointing out things that aren't the best, you know? Because feedback is always nice, and it's not like people go out of their way to make a bad game, right? And I don't think they have made a bad game, just to be clear. I think they have made a good game here. There's just a few points where I'm like, I'm not a big fan of this. I think this could be different. Change the font. Stuff like that. Yeah, so just... I don't want to, like... I'm not going to send this to anyone to be like, here's what I dislike about what you've been doing. This is like just me putting my thoughts out there. And if people like what I have to say, great. If people disagree with what I have to say, then who cares, you know? It's just me putting it out there. Yeah. I think that about covers everything I have to say about the beta. Overall, I had a good time. I didn't end up checking off everything on the map for the rewards and stuff like that, because I don't want to burn out on the game, you know? It's just a few months away, plus there's next weekend playing Necromancer and Druid. I don't want to do everything there is to do. Cuz, you know, you're still going to want it to feel somewhat fresh when it actually comes out. But overall, I've had a good time with the game, with some minor stuff picking up. Like peaking up. Like just frustrations and stuff like that with rubber banding mainly, but like I said earlier, I think they're gonna fix all that stuff because they're aware of it. So on that note, that is officially my beta feedback. The raw recording of this is 57 minutes. I hope I cut that down a bit at least, so that people are actually willing to watch and hear the stuff I have to say about it. On that note, though, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to the Diablo team for putting together a decent game, you know. Thank you for putting your time and energy into this, and make the druid smaller. Don't copy my body type the next time you're making a druid. Please, make him cool instead. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.